Welcome back to A Citizen of the Warming World. I'm your host, Dr. J, your friendly neighborhood scholar with PhD in knowing a little bit about everything and occasionally too much. Today's episode is special because we're not just talking about climate change, we're talking with people who are already living in this aftermath. We heard from someone who lost everything to the floods in Ghana, from a UN policy expert who sees crisis happening statistically and structurally, and from a legal scholar who argues that climate refugees do not exist, at least not in the eyes of international law. So buckle up, this might be one of the most important conversations we ever had. I want to start with a voice that global reports and UN data often forget, the voice of the person who lived it. Today, we are joined by someone currently in Tunisia, originally from Selimboma, Ghana. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk with us.
Thank you for having me.
You experienced displacement firsthand. Could you share what happened?
Yes, I left Selimboma in Ghana about 6 months ago with my family. My father used to run a small farm. For a long time, the land still treated us well. But a few years ago, everything changed. The rains became uncontrollable, then drought came. And this cycle destroyed the farm my father had built his whole life. From June to September, heavy rains were always normal. But this June, the flood finally reached us. Our house was swallowed in a single day. Walls, roof, everything. Not a trace left. After that, we had no home, no farm, no work. Living was the only option.
A home disappearing in a day. That's not something statics can ever capture. I heard many in your community didn't leave. What did leaving mean to them?
That's true. About 6 in 10 of my friends stayed. Leaving wasn't just practical. It was emotional and cultural. Leaving Selimboma means giving up your home, your ancestors, your family's history, and the bonds you built with everyone in the village. One of my friend's father once yelled at him, saying, "Leaving this village means abandoning your ancestors' graves." Sometimes I wonder if those who stayed are still alive.
There are losses that don't appear in climate graph. Loss of history, identity, belonging. That weighed heavier than any rainfall measurement.
Also, Adeyemi officers visited our village many times, but nothing changed. People always say, the government repeats promises, but nothing improves.
A familiar global pattern. Disaster visit often, and officials visit often, but solutions? Rarely. You're now in Tunisia. Is Europe the plan?
Yes, my family dream of reaching the UK and settling there, but I'm not confident at all. Tunisia is full of people like me, pushed up by climate change. Most people try to cross the Mediterranean with just a single rescue boat, and even that is hard to get. Even if we make it safely, we hear Europe might still reject us. If even the UK turns us away, where are we supposed to go next? I don't know.
That uncertainty, the purgatory between places, might be the quiet cruelty of displacement.
I really miss my home and the sense of safety. For 6 months, I haven't had one peaceful night. Wherever we stay, I can't say, this is my home.
Home is more than walls. It's a place where your body forgets to be alert. Losing that is devastating.
I want to say something. People see floods on the news and say, that's terrible. But they don't know what it feels like to be forced out. When people speak without understanding that weight, I feel a huge gap between what we live through and what they imagine. Even here in Tunisia, people see us simply as migrants trying to reach Europe, not as families pushed up by something we couldn't control. I just wish people would say, why did this person have to leave? That small act of empathy means more than most people realize.
Thank you truly. Your voice reminds us that behind every climate statics is a story that didn't ask to be written. Now we turn to someone who sees the crisis from the balcony view, Dr. Adeyemi, UN Migration and Climate Policy Expert. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Lee. Happy to be here.
Dr. Adeyemi, the biggest structural shift challenging the traditional idea of refugee is the climate crisis. Could you statistically explain the scale and inevitability of the current climate displacement problem?
Yes, this has moved beyond mere prediction. The World Bank's Groundswell report projects that over 260 million people across 6 major regions could be forced to become internal climate migrant within their own countries by 2050. This figure is unprecedented. The key values are slow onset environmental changes, such as chronic water stress, severe declines in crop productivity, and sea level rise. This large scale movement is already a structural inevitability due to the rocking effect of past emissions.
How exactly do the stressors create new forms of displacement? Could you share examples such as those facing territorial loss or health refugees?
Climate change is triggering new mechanisms. First, we have the practical issue of statelessness through territorial loss. I think the Pacific island nation of Tuvalu is the prime example. As the nation slowly disappears under rising seas, as people face a struggle for survival, as their physical homeland is vanishing. Second, we see the creation of health refuges due to escalating health crisis. Rising temperatures expand the habitat of disease vector, like mosquitoes, increasing outbreaks. When climate stress collapses the public health environment of vulnerable areas, seeking refuge becomes the only viable option for survival.
This crisis is characterized by an anniversary of empathy. As a policy expert, why is a global joint effort essential, and what is the specific weight of responsibility and historically high-emitting nations must bear?
This is fundamentally an issue of climate justice. The crisis is driven by the historical emission of affluent nations, yes, the governors. Yet the damage is disproportionately suffered by developing nations. To address this asymmetry, the most crucial mechanism is the full establishment and funding of the Loss and Damage Fund, supported by historically responsible countries. This fund is a necessary structural indemnity to compensate nations and individuals for unavoidable harm. Burden sharing, must be formalized.
Most displacement is internal. How does the climate crisis intensify social inequality within a country? What does climate gentrification in Miami tells us?
When Miami case is the powerful lesson. As the sea level rise intensifies, worse residents seek out higher elevation, safer ground. Historically, these island areas were often low-income, marginalized neighborhoods. When affluent buyers move in, property values and rent skyrocket, leading to climate gentrification, while long-term, low-income residents are priced out and forced to relocate, not by water, but by market forces triggered by climate risk. Climate adaptation policies must be integrated with social justice measures like rent control and guaranteed housing stability to prevent climate change from deepening systemic inequality.
To guarantee the rights of people displaced across borders, what specific policy or structural proposals would you suggest to secure the rights of climate migrants?
We must treat migration as a global public good, requiring shared management. My core proposal is a global climate mobility infrastructure. At first, establish a responsibility-based levy. Historically, high-emitting nations must contribute to a climate responsibility levy pool. This fund would finance the global infrastructure for resettlement and basic needs. And second, empower global mobility agencies. Organizations like IOM or UNHCR need enhanced resources to manage migration corridors and guarantee a minimum floor of post-national basic rights for those rocking former refugee status. Securing the right of these new global citizens requires a binding international structure.
Borders are 20th century inventions. Climate change is a 21st century problem, and our tools are stuck in 1950. Now for the legal angle, because if climate migrants exist in reality but not in law, we have a major problem. Professor Zeen, welcome. Everyone talks about climate refugees, but you say that they don't exist. Are we hallucinating?
Socially, they are real, but legally, they are hot. The 1951 Refugee Convention is like an exclusive club. You only get in if you are prosecuted for once. Religion or politics, climate change is not on the list. Court route is as a generalized threat, meaning because it hurt everyone. The road protects no one, so the climate refuge is legally a myth.
That sounds harsh, but people are dying. Why do courts keep rejecting them?
Because the law is obsessed with violence. To be a refugee, you need a prosecutor, a bad guide. But who do you sue for the hurricane? Mother Nature, Curtis, New Zealand, and the US have rejected this case because you can't put a typhoon in hurricane. Without a human villain, this is no case.
So the refugee route is a dead end. What about laws for stateless people? Can we use those?
We are trying to solve a 1950 problem with a 1952 kid. It doesn't work. Current law defines stateless as some without a passport, but climate change created a paradox called the difficult statelessness. Imagine you still have your passport, but your island is underwater. You have the key, which is citizenship, but the house territory is gone. Existing law doesn't recognize people who have documents but own land. Legally, it's like an Euro 400 fraud. Case not found.
That is terrifying. You also mentioned a concept called statelessness without crossing borders. What does that feel like?
Think of it as psychological homelessness. You have not moved, but your home have moved away from you. In places like Myanmar, people lose their community to climate gentrification. They are technically citizens, but feel like strangers in their own land. This is not economy lost and damaged. Invisible Trump that the global conflict ignored.
Professor Zeen, we can't end on such a hopeless note. If the law is broken, how do we fix it?
We need to stop trying to force-feed climate victims into our box. We need a new model of citizenship that doesn't just care about which side of broad you want born on. The road should not be a road, it should be a bridge. And right now, we are building road while the water is rising.
Before we close, I want to ask each of you one question. What does global citizenship mean in the warming world?
Global citizenship means empathy, asking, why did this person have to leave? Not judging before understanding.
It means shared responsibility. The atmosphere is shared, so must the solution be?
It means designing roads for the world we have today, not the ones we have had in 1951.
To me, global citizenship begins with a simple shift. Instead of asking, who belongs inside our borders, we ask, what do we owe each other as human beings shared at one collapsing planet? To everyone listening, thank you for staying with us through one most important conversation of our time. Climate change is not a future scenario, it's a present injustice. And the people experiencing it deserve not only our empathy, but our structural, legal, and global action. This has been Citizenship of Warming World. I'm Dr. J. Stay curious, stay compensate. And remember, the world is warming, but our humanity doesn't have to cool.